My name's Nick Bracks and I'm a storyteller who has dedicated my entire adult life to creating positive conversations around mental health. In recent years, discussions around mental health have become less taboo and entered the mainstream vernacular. I've delivered over 1,000 mental health seminars around the globe, including several TED Talks, and I believe we all have a story to tell. In my book, Move Your Mind, I cover my story and stories from people that inspire me, as well as insights from world-leading mental health experts. This book will help you to learn how to recognize mental health issues before they become a problem. Use your personal challenges as motivators, take ownership of your well-being, and create new daily habits that increase happiness and reduce stress. I'd like to invite you to my new podcast, Move Your Mind, where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. On today's episode, I want to welcome Therese Gennari. Therese is a speaker, educator, and environmental activist. She co-founded one of the world's first ethical modelling agencies, Role Models Management, and the online activist community, The Collective. Her podcast, Hey Change, aims to inspire listeners to embrace curiosity and positivity, as well as promote ethical and sustainable ways of life. As a climate optimist, coach, and educator, she helps to shift the narrative around climate conversations so that we can act from courage and excitement and not from fear. And just another reminder that the Move Your Mind book and audiobook is now available online globally. You can find it at nickbracks.com, and the book is also available in stores Australia-wide. Therese, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. We've had a few really interesting conversations. I've only sort of known you for a short amount of time, but love everything you're doing. You've got an amazing story and so many, I think we're not going to fit it all into this episode. There's so many things that you have done and are doing. But first of all, I just want to say, thank you again for coming and making the time to have this conversation.
Nick, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. And I've known you for such a short amount of time. We keep saying like, okay, I get you. We're just like, we're the same kind of person. And I feel like we could talk for hours. So let's see what we can go through today. But I'm very excited to chat more with you.
Definitely. And it definitely is. It's refreshing to meet people who see the world through a similar lens. So that's been really enjoyable to be able to relate on those things. So before we get into it, are you able to give our listeners just a bit of a background on yourself and sort of where you've come from and basically how you ended up where you are now?
Yeah, isn't that always the question? You look back in hindsight. And
maybe in a brief,
what led me here? So I'm born and raised in Sweden. I grew up there. I apparently had this drive to move to New York City since I was little. My mom told me when I was 8 years old, I walked into the kitchen and I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to move to New York and work with marketing. And she goes, okay, you do that. But I did, she told me then on my graduation day, when I just received the letter of acceptance to go to take my master's, get my master's in New York City in marketing. She was like, okay, you have been saying this for years. So of course this is going to happen. But the reason I chose the path of marketing is actually because I've had this innate desire or passion or whatever you want to call it since I was very young to work for the planet. I became pretty aware about environmental destruction and inequality and climate change at an early age and started to grow a lot of frustration around that, especially because growing up in a country like Sweden, where people assume that things are okay, or it's you're not exposed to the disaster on a daily basis, if we put it that way. And so me trying to spark action and raise awareness when I was younger, which was right long before Greta Thunberg was around, no one really wanted to listen. It was like, okay, I get it. Like climate change is real, yada, yada. But it felt like no one was really getting it the way I was. And from the inability to engage people or feeling like I couldn't do anything, I felt like I had zero power and in my impact on the world, besides, doing my fair of recycling and all the things I was trying to do, riding my bike to school, I felt like I had no power to make an impact. And so I was really trying to decide, what can I do? How can I choose a path career-wise, that I could potentially at some point in my life have an impact? And so I chose marketing because I thought to myself, well, if you can learn how to kind of trick people into buying stuff they don't need, how, obviously you can use the same things and tools and skill sets to also empower positive action. So that was kind of why I chose marketing. But at the same time, to be completely honest with you, Nick, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, okay, this is one path that might lead me to something else. And so I studied marketing in Sweden and had the ability to go to New York City to do an internship at a marketing firm. And so I jumped on that opportunity, fell in love with New York, because who doesn't? And decided I had to go back. So I've been just figuring things out ever since. I started, going to my master's program at City College of New York in marketing. At the same time, I was really trying to figure out, okay, it's one thing to learn about marketing in school, but like, what's my voice? What's my platform? How can I make a difference? And at the time, people started to randomly ask me on the street if I was modeling, which is just something that apparently happens in New York if you're tall and blonde or whatever. Like I guess I just fit the bill of what a model would look like. And at first I was like, no, I'm not. And then I started asking myself like, well, maybe this is a sign from the universe, like a little nudge here. So I told myself, okay, let's see what can happen if you choose to become a model, because this was just when Instagram started to really take off, and all these Victoria's Secret models had millions of followers and got so many likes. And I was thinking to myself, here's a person who has so much impact and so much influence and a huge platform, and yet they're not using these platforms for anything with a positive impact. And I was like, well, there's a lot of wasted capital here, human capital, and also space of raising awareness and making an impact. So the reason I actually decided to model was because I wanted to gain that platform. And I was pretty old at the time. You can say this because you're a modeler yourself. I was 24, so it's pretty late to start, jumping or diving into this industry. But for some weird reason, I did get signed by an agency and started modeling in New York City as I was going to school, and learned pretty quickly that the industry was nothing like what I expected it to be, or that I thought it would be. And my agents, although I told them, I want to work with companies like, that are working for sustainability and vegan companies and all these things, they're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But nothing happened from that. Like, they didn't understand what it meant to align me with my, with companies with similar values that I thought would happen if I just spoke up and shared my thoughts and views. And so having modeled for a while, I didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to be doing. And so I quit that too. And I quit school, and I said, okay, you're on a mission, girl. You need to figure this out, because you're going to get kicked out if you don't figure out your visa situation, and you need to make money. And it's like, what can you do? Long story short, I shared my idea of an ethical modeling agency with a few people, got connected with my now business partner. We started Role Models Management early 2017, and I've been running the agency ever since. And so I'm still in this mission of like, okay, what does it mean to empower models, to empower people, to really help people understand that we all have a platform to speak up from, and that we all play a role in shifting culture and co-creating a better world, and speaking our values and doing whatever we can to show up for the positive change. And that's pivoted me into more what I'm actually doing today with my climate optimist work, and that I hope to be doing more of moving forward. That was a very long-rounded answer, but I guess the short version of my story.
Thank you for sharing it. And that, I mean, even in that short version, there's like probably about 5 hours of different conversations we could have just based on that. Like there's so many things that you could dive into, and I love all and also like, so I can see even in the path I've gone on, there's so many parallels. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Cause like I sort of fell into the modeling at a young age and was on reality television shows and then acting. And I always looked at it as, okay, this can, how can I leverage this to, use that platform to help in mental health? Because like you're saying, it's a really powerful thing, and it can be used in either a good way or a bad way, or just indifferently. But if you are in that position, or you can build that kind of platform, it's a really powerful thing where if we can spread that message, like you're saying, like what you're doing with role models, it's amazing. Like, I think it's such an incredible business that you've created there, because that is what we need to educate people in, in this day and age of influencers and, there's information flying everywhere. How can we influence more people to use that for a positive cause, which, I think is such an amazing thing. So it's, so great what you're doing. And I think people can often find it. I know I found in my life, people have always been like, hang on, you're an actor and then you're also a mental health advocate. And they're like, these are two polar opposite things. But I think they actually can work so coherently together as well. But isn't it so interesting though that we love to categorize. It's like, why are there polar opposites? Exactly.
It's like, because you're an actor, that just means that you know how to read a script and act out on stage or, in front of a camera. It's nothing to do with your personality or who you are as a person, right? But you're so right. Like we get so categorized. And I think that's something that I've had to deal with my whole life because, and I think everyone who's listening feels the same, like people have expectations from us and we choose a path, and then people and ourselves, we have expectations on ourselves. So like, well, I went to school for this. And of course now this is what I am, but it doesn't mean that who you have to be moving forward. And also you can be many things at the same time. And I think it's important that we allow ourselves to go there and ask those questions and not put ourselves in boxes that will prohibit us to actually give to the world and to ourselves. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a really important topic. And like you're saying, we can be multiple different things, but also within that, even if we are multiple things, that none of those things are defining us. We're still, at the core, it's like, if you remove all of those things, we still should feel like, we're enough of a person, and we're sort of taught in society the opposite of let's define ourselves by what we achieve or what we do, or someone asks, who are you or what are you all about? And it's about achievements or this or that, which it's not going to fulfill you or be sustainable. So it's this weird mix. But like you're saying, people always said to me, if you want to do acting, you can't start a business. And if you're going to do a business, you have to only do that and not do anything else. I was like, well, no, that's not going to work for me. And the acting only worked because I started a business. So that could support me and give me that. So it's like, again, anyway, it's a whole nother, we could probably do a podcast just on this topic, but,
before we leave though, sorry, I'm not adding on to this time, but
please do.
Something that just came to me, because when I go to gatherings, and I was just in New York City and went to a bunch of events during New York Climate Week, which was, interesting because it's kind of the first time since COVID that happened, but, mingling with all these people and, they're all like really cool and doing these awesome things. And you don't want to be the person that's like, okay, what do you do? Because you want to connect with someone in a different way. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm really curious to learn. What are you doing? Like, like tell me what you do so we can cross over or do something together, or I just want to learn from you. So I do a good question. Like, what should you ask someone who you just met that you want to connect further with, but you don't want to be, as, I don't know, like title based. It's just like, what's your title? What do you do? But like, what is a good question for that? Do you have any thoughts on it?
It's probably something I need to think about as well, but I think a lot of it's like about, like in that instant, I think people can tell by the tone of, how you're asking something. So it's like what you're at this climate thing and you're passionate about it and you're asking, they can see you're probably asking in the sense of, I want to learn, whereas in New York, I mean, I've been here for barely a year, so you know more than me, but I've met people where you can feel this energy when it is those environments where people are asking these questions about, okay, let's, compare who's making more money or who's this or who's that or status or blah. Like it's just this energy in it. So I don't know, probably something I need to think about myself as well. What's a good question for it? But I think it is that thing where in our gut, we can always feel when it is that environment where the conversation's being driven by let's compare and compete and all that kind of thing.
Well, I think you actually answered my question, because I think the energy part is really what it's about. You can say anything, you can use any words, but it's all about the energy and how you make someone feel. So thank you. That was it.
Absolutely. Oh, there we go. Well, thank you. Good. So, yeah, I mean, you talked about, climate change awareness, and you've been interested in that for a long time. You're doing a lot in that area. How important is awareness for this? And I guess it's like probably similar. I look at it to mental health, where I've been interested and involved in this for, 12 plus years. And it was talked about, but not that much. And now it's getting talked about a lot more, which is similar with climate change. But how far do we have to go? And, how important is it that this awareness gets pushed as far and wide as possible?
I would say it could be one of the most important things today. I speak and teach a lot on this. I talk about how to grow emotional resilience. How do we deal with climate news? Because I feel like a big part in why we're not more aware is because the information out there is just too hard to deal with. And we haven't been, taught how to deal with information that is that heavy and that hard to comprehend. And so I think, you coming from mental health space, from a mental health perspective, we just don't want to know what's going on. And there's so many reasons for this, but I think growing awareness, we need to know what is going on. There's some study that shows only 1 in 4 Americans hear someone they know talk about climate change on a monthly basis. So considering it's the biggest crisis we've ever faced and will be facing for decades to come, how do we not hear people talk about it more often? And it's because of many reasons. But I think if you want to help anything in the climate movement, you can start by just having conversations. We need to normalize these conversations. We have to understand you do not have to be a climate expert or a scientist or work in the field to have a say in this. It's okay to ask questions and not have answers. I think that's something too. We have to just dismantle this whole idea that, if you bring something up, you need to either have an answer for it or a solution, or else don't complain about it. It's like, no, it's okay to be afraid about climate change. It's okay to be freaking out about what's going to happen in the future and to not know what the answer is. And I think landing in that, like, okay, this is painful. This hurts. This is really scary. And it's okay for it to be that way. I think we always want to find the solution, the short answer to like, okay, tell me something to make me optimistic. I mean, I'm a climate optimist. That's what people know me as. And I get this question often, like, okay, why should we be optimistic? Tell me why I should be hopeful. And I can give you a lot of reasons to that. But I think we need to start with telling ourselves it's okay to not know if this is going to work out or not, because we don't know. And that's the reality of it. But I would say to your question, raising awareness about climate change and the fact that it's very real. I mean, we just got the new IPCC report, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, that came out, and it said for the first time ever, there is no doubt, no room for doubt at all, that climate change is real and it's caused by humans. So we know this now, like the science is real. Everyone is behind this. So, we need to just continue raising awareness, but there are ways to talk about climate change where it's not putting us in a state of denial and fear and inaction and depression, which is an easy route to go into when you start to learn about it, or finding ways to talk about climate change where like, okay, we need to understand this is real, but at the same time, here are all the things we can do today to make sure that we do everything we can to figure this out.
Yeah. And relating it to sort of mental health, I guess it's the same sort of thing where there's awareness, but then a lot of people don't really want to talk about the nuts and bolts of it, or, peel back those layers, because as you were saying, it's painful and it can be scary, and, but then you've got to confront reality. So we're society likes to sort of acknowledge things, but then put a Band-Aid on it rather than really let's actually go and look at this for what it actually is, because only until we do that, we can't go and actually make the long-term change necessary. So we sort of need to. So, I love what you're saying with that.
And also, this took me many years to figure out, because I started out being what I call an angry activist. That was, in my teenage years when no one else cared, and my frustration grew, and I felt like, we need to do something. Come on. Like, I just learned this about the fashion industry, and I just learned about this about the food industry. And, I thought by just raising awareness and telling people what I knew, they would feel the same. I'm like, okay, like, of course we have to get to action, but there's so many reasons why people can't care. They don't have the capacity or the mental capacity or the space or the ability to do all these things that you might feel like it's really urgent. And so I went from the angry activist to having this awakening of like, okay, this is not working. You have to change your approach. Let's be a climate optimist. And then it took me as many years to figure out what being a climate optimist means. And for the longest time, I thought, well, there's a lot of bad news out there. If I can just ignore them to some extent and focus on the good news, and like, what are all the good news or like things that are happening that I can actually pay attention to and spread awareness about? Just stay there. Just, pay attention to the optimistic things and be positive and spread that light. The only thing is that you can do that on a conscious level, but the majority of the information that we consume is actually subconscious. And so although you're not paying attention consciously, your body is. And so you do know that things are not great. You do know that things are getting increasingly urgent. And you do know that not enough people are taking action. So how do you deal with knowing that, but not choosing to actually take that on or like take that in? And what I've learned is that your body will just store that inside. where it grows into all things like anxiety and depression. And I've had days when I completely just lost it, and I would be crying for no reason and stressed out. And I was just like a JoJo back and forth and back and forth. And it took me many years of landing in this one understanding. And that is that awareness hurts, and that's okay. And I'll say that one more time. Awareness hurts, and that's okay. Back to my point earlier, knowing it is going to be painful. But at the same time, if we open up the gates to awareness, we can also see all the beautiful things, and a lot of love and joy and happiness is going to come from being in a state of awareness. But there's also going to be fear and pain and anxiety and sadness. And so I think landing in that space of like, okay, it's okay to not always feel amazing, right? It's okay to have days where like, whoa, I do not know how we're going to figure out climate change. But the more you land in that awareness and coming to the understanding that this is okay to feel this way, and start sharing that with other people, you will realize you're not alone in feeling this way. In fact, there's so many other people who feel this way who are actually out there doing whatever they can to work on the opposite. So how can you join the positive movement? How can you actually become a daily activist and start working towards the changes that you wish to see in the world? I call it being an optimist in action. We'll get into it more later, but just to hone in on this point, it's okay to not always feel amazing. And I think I would love to hear your points on this too, coming from a mental health space where like, denial and ignoring the issue, it's not going to help you get there.
Oh, no, like, and I love what you're saying there. And I would think of it exactly the same in the mental health sort of perspective of, it's sort of false economy, because if you're like, I'm going to deny things and ignore it, and this is what happens with mental health, normally what unfortunately happens is people will not make a change until the pain of not changing outweighs the pain of changing. So you're sort of hitting rock bottom, and you're in agony before you change, which is not a good thing. But even by not changing and sort of telling yourself, I'm going to ignore things and block everything, that's going to come with its own pain and discomfort. You're not going to probably acknowledge it, but it'll be there. And like what you were saying, it's actually worse because you're living in that sort of middle ground of denial, but and bottling things up, and that's not a pleasant thing. So I think we need, and we're not taught about this stuff from. I think and this is one of the things I want to talk to you about as well. How do we make longer term change? And I love how a lot of what you're doing is looking at how can I educate people on an individual level to become a leader in their own community. And I really believe that's so important in such a powerful way, because if it starts with the individual, and if every individual can start having that mindset of, I want to educate myself, I'm not going to wait for change to happen. I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to do it. And if we can all do that and then empower others, that's what I talk about so much in mental health. That's how we start to make a longer term change. And then you start looking at, well, how do we then start getting taught this in schooling and in companies and in university, et cetera. So I think that's one of the questions I was going to, ask you with, is that your view with climate change, that we need to really look at it from that standpoint of how do we empower individuals to become their own leaders in doing this?
Yes. Yes, you nailed it. There's this quote that I love so much and truly understand these days. Right now, I don't remember who said it, so I'm going to have to come back and you put it in the show notes. But the quote goes, leaders don't create more followers, they create more leaders. And it resonates with me so much, because that's really what you're out to do. As a leader, you want people to learn and be empowered and then become their own leaders in their own life, in their own communities, to the people around them. And when you become a leader, it doesn't mean that you have to go on stage and tell people what to do. That's not what a leader is for me. It's like you get agency of your own life, and you feel like, okay, I can't impact everything. I can't control everything, but I can control my own world. I can become a leader in my world. And I am very aware of the fact that if we are to have a chance of figuring out climate change, we need to have leaders, the big leaders, like in governments, in companies, in corporations, on board and make the bold actions. We need them to do that rapidly. I'm seeing that shifting, which is good. And we have COP26 coming up in November in Glasgow. This is all great. But, we really need to put pressure on our actual leaders with a title leader to do whatever they're supposed to do to make sure we stay under 1.5% Celsius increase in climate. But back to my point of like being a leader for yourself, I always say that, yes, your individual actions are not going to change the world alone. They will add up alongside everyone else's individual actions. And we have to remember what an incredible power we have in our purchasing power, how we vote with our dollars, and how we vote at the elections, but also how we, again, hold our local officials accountable. But just the small things of like shifting culture. We tend to forget how we are actually the system. We keep saying we need system change. Well, we are the system. How you walk out and how you show up in public, if you go to the store, if you go to the coffee shop, if you're just taking the bus, like you're all contributing to the system. And you might be the one weird person doing something differently at the beginning, but you are always planting seeds. So if you let's say bring your own coffee cup to the coffee shop and say, hey, can I please have my own? I did this for Nick the other week, so he's like nodding right now.
I was gonna say just quickly, but before you finish that impacted me because I consciously went and said, hey, can I have an actual cup? Whereas normally I might not have even thought about that. So there you go.
Yeah. And it's like, we forget that, sometimes it's just literally about making the ask, right? Like I go to Sweet Green, which is a salad bar in New York City, and they have compostable bowls, but their lids are made of plastic. It might be compostable plastic, but I don't really believe in the whole system. So I try to not use anything disposable if I don't have to. And I go there and I say, okay, I don't need a lid. I might even walk home a few blocks with my salad, but even so, like it can survive a few blocks in New York City air without a lid on it. Like I believe in that. So like, consciously just speaking up, and sometimes they will almost, throw on a lid regardless because they're so used to it. Like it's just a system. So you have to be like, please don't give me a lid, like be really clear on it. But they're like, oh yeah, we're trying to reduce plastic waste. Awesome. So they're usually on board with it. And right now I am the weird person who's having to speak up and say these things. But like you said, it can all ripple effect. Now you're more aware of like, oh, actually, maybe next time I go out and have a coffee, I should just ask them if they have an actual cup that I can drink from since I'm sitting there. And someone who's working at the restaurant is okay, now we have so many people here asking for no lid. Maybe we should change the system, right? So we do have power in what we do. But if anything, besides all this, that we're changing culture and shifting norms and voting with our dollars, I always say, do it for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be this one person in the huge world, and you feel like you have nothing to, no power to make an impact. And you have two choices. Either you show up for the change or you don't. And I'll tell you this much, showing up for the change is going to make you feel much better than not doing it. The inaction part, actually, climate anxiety is rising. And so I think that's really, important to acknowledge. It's sad, so bad. But one of the biggest reasons for climate anxiety is the feeling that we can't do anything about it. And the fastest way to get out of anxiety is to do anything. So I always say, do it for yourself. Do it to feel better. Do it to feel more empowered. Do it to become a leader in your own life. And also the things you do on a daily basis become your habits, and the habits define who you are as a person. And so suddenly you will see yourself as this eco-superhero who like, I am the person who brings my coffee cup. I am the person who's going to bring my own bag to the store. I am the person who's going to, say no to fast fashion and go shop vintage. Like you become that person and you start feeling really good being that person. And then the better you feel, you have a lot more optimism flowing in your body, and then you're going to be a lot more influential to the people around you, because guess what? People want to be with people who are optimistic and fun and cool. And so if you feel better, the people around you will also want to feel as cool as you are, and they will also start making the change. So you have so much impact and so much power to change the world. And you have to come back to saying, what can I do today?
There's so many things in that I love so much. But like on that simplistic level of, and this is what I say in mental health as well. I'm like, go and do these things on a selfish level first. Do what's going to make, or it's not selfish, but look at it even if you think it is. Do what's going to make you feel good. Do it because it empowers you and makes you feel good, because that then is putting something positive out into the world. It's going to influence other people. And if we all have that viewpoint, then it does start to have that ripple effect. But I also, habits, I think I talk about that so much. And I think it's so important that we're aware of that, because we can have the best intentions in the world and be aware of something. But if we don't actually do something on a daily basis, the change won't happen. And, you might do it occasionally, but it's not enough. But, once you make something into a habit, you don't think about it, and it doesn't take long. They say like a month, 21 to 30 days to make a new habit of doing it regularly. Once you've done it, then you almost feel anxiety if you don't do it. So it becomes so ingrained. So it's like, it's so important people are aware of that. It's not actually that hard once you make these habits. They become, their second nature after that.
And that's also where you have to start small and add something on every, like don't do it all at once. My husband
get overwhelmed otherwise.
Yeah. He's like, aren't you tired of always having to find the most sustainable way of doing things? And I'm like, no, it's more tiring to not do it. Like it actually pains me to having to use plastic. And I'm not saying this to like shame on anyone because I know plastic is everywhere. And so I do use plastic too. Like it's pretty impossible to avoid. But I'm just saying like, I'm so used to, it's just so part of my daily habits now to go for the bulk options if I can find it, to, be more thrifty in how I shop my food or whatever I do to try to eliminate my waste. And so, yeah, completely like it becomes who you are. It's just part of your identity. And so it's not hard. It's hard at the beginning because you're doing something new, but just keep doing it and add on small things, don't do it all at once. Don't overwhelm yourself. But also feel good about it. And you said something really important that I really want to hone in on. It's, we can't heal the world unless we heal ourselves first. And we are the world. Yeah. We are, someone, I just interviewed on my podcast, Sally Rani from Global Choices. And she said, we are nature waking up to itself. And I thought it was so beautiful. And I think coming back to that reminder of like, it is complex. It's super complicated, but at the same time, it's so simple, right? Like we are nature. And I think the biggest act of change we can do is actually slowing down and do less and just be more here for it.
Absolutely. And, so many of the things you're saying, I love it. And it's sort of what we talked about when we met as well, the parallels between sort of what you're talking about and what I'm talking about. And there's so many, crossovers, but I think that's such an important point as well. Life is like incredibly complicated, but it can also be incredibly simple. And we're living in, the most chaotic time in human history now with, information flying everywhere. There's all these crazy things happening in the world. We've got so much access to everything. If you don't make a conscious effort yourself to take control of it, you will become overwhelmed and it will affect you and it's not going to change. If anything, there's probably going to become more noise in the world. So people now have to take the initiative to be like, okay, well, I'm going to have to discipline myself about what media I look at, when I do certain things, when I work, when I don't work, what routines I keep, all of those sort of things. Otherwise, you're just going to, and, I've fallen victim to that. It's happened to me in New York when I was trying to find my feet here and I didn't set strong enough boundaries and I got overwhelmed because it's, it's a chaotic city and you've got stuff everywhere and you have to be so strong in that. So it's such an important point what you're saying. I just love all these things that you talk. I think, like we said, this could go for 5 hours. There's so many different things we could discuss in it. But on that topic, one of the things I wanted to ask you was with how do people decipher what is good and bad information when it comes to climate change because of how much information is now out there? How do you work out what's credible, what's real? How do I sort of find the right stuff?
I saw this question in there.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, how do I answer this?
It's a complicated thing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a valid question to ask. And I don't know if I have the right answer. I would say the first answer I would give is checking with your gut, there is so much information flying around out there. And as we slow down more and set more boundaries and create more space, it's going to be easier to tune in and feel what feels right or not. When it comes to climate change, it can be hard to know what feels right because it's all so new and unpredictable. We don't really know. But I would say there's a lot of really credible organizations out there, like obviously the UN. They're on all the social media. So follow the UN on social media. I can tell you their information is correct. If there's a climate scientist, trust me, they do not make money creating this doom and gloom. So if they're saying something, and they're pretty cautious what they're saying because they get chased down for whatever they're saying from companies and people who don't believe in them. So if they're putting something up publicly, I think the climate scientists are right. And then there are, organizations like Sierra Club and Greenpeace and all these organizations that have been around for such a long time. And they're not trying to just raise propaganda to push, any political agenda or incentive. They literally just want to raise awareness. And there are so many good social media accounts too. Future Earth is a really good one. Earthrise Studio is another one I really like. I try to really vet whatever I'm sharing too. But then I think we have to remember that sometimes there is misinformation, and we're human beings, and it is such a rapid, pace right now on social media where like something is shared and people feel like I need to reshare this, otherwise I'm not part of the conversation. And that's pretty dangerous sometimes, because how easy is it to spread something that isn't true, right?
Yeah.
And I think we could all agree that misinformation is one of the most dangerous things that we are dealing with right now, because we need to know what's going on so we can act correctly on that. But I would say anything, real news outlet like The Guardian or New York Times, or, a credible news source that really fact check whatever they're sharing on their social media and the media platforms. And also to really, speak to the fact that it's amazing that these big news outlets actually are talking about climate change. There was a time where they didn't, right? So climate awareness is out there, which is amazing. And I think tuning into yourself and like, does this feel okay? Like if you see someone, an influencer you follow, share something, you're like, that seems weird, or like, this is a really, also opinions, I would say, be a little bit aware, because news is one thing, science and facts is also one thing. But when people have very strong opinions and tell you what you should think or what you should do, I would always just check in and say, okay, but does this really resonate with me? Like maybe there's something else behind this that I haven't checked, or don't know about, or why is this person doing this? Like maybe their story isn't shared the right way. Maybe there's actually something good coming from this, and we shouldn't be so quick on just judging everyone. I feel another thing I need to just mention real quick is eco shaming. Like we are so fast on judging and pointing fingers, and someone's trying to do the right thing, and then we get after that person and say like, well, you're not doing enough, or that's not right. And it's like, it's exhausting, right? So I think being more acceptive of what people are trying to do and to cheer on improvements and people are trying to do better. But of course, at the same time, hold people accountable and make sure there isn't just a ton of greenwashing. But cancel culture is a real thing. So to be aware of that. But to answer your question, anything credible like the UN, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, and then of course, any big media outlet like the New York Times, The Guardian, Forbes, like anything that they have fact check whatever they're putting out there.
Yeah, no, so much in that answer, and I think that gives a lot of really good information around that. And going back as well to what you said earlier, I think is just so important to reiterate. I love what you were saying about how being a leader is about how we influence the other, how we empower other people, not about how many people we can just spread a message to or tell what to do. And I think it's in this world where it is influencers and about how can I just get more people following me or whatever it is. Moving sort of away from that. And if you have a big following, great. But if you're trying to build a following just for the sake of building a following, it's unlikely that's going to sustain in the future anyway. Like I think if you do things really, it's like building a house. If you do it, build a solid foundation and do it for the right reason, it's going to last the test of time. So it's sort of going back to do things, properly and credibly and for the right reason. And then you'll have more longevity and, getting that out there anyway. I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah. And the biggest impact we do have is actually, to the people we already know in a close circle. And the biggest shifts happen in our homes, in our hearts. So if you want to have a real impact and make a positive change in terms of climate change, and the direction we're heading into, start talking about it at home. You don't have to create a massive social media following to have an impact. You'll have a much bigger impact just talking to the people that already know you. Yeah,
I love that. I think it's so important. Everyone can make a change. So I've got another big question for you here. You've probably seen this one as well. What are some of the implications on the planet if we don't start to make these changes? What are a few things that it's leading to?
Oh, okay, so just to make it clear, I'm not a scientist or an expert. I'm just a nerd who have been, wanting to know this for a long time. Well, the scary thing is that we don't really know exactly what's going to happen, right? Like we are racing towards what's called tipping points. And that's a threshold in the state of the climate or the ecosystem where once we pass that threshold, there's no going back. So for example, our Greenland's ice is melting, that's a threshold. And once the ice is gone, I just learned to like the obvious, we can't grow more ice, right? We can grow more trees, but we can't grow more ice. And so once the ice is gone, it's gone. And the sea level rises from that is going to be, unbelievable. Like major cities, the most of the world's biggest cities that are coastal cities will be underwater. So just think about that. Now I'm not going to get the numbers straight, but I think in 2030, we're looking at 1 billion. Actually, don't quote me the numbers here, but the refugee crisis, and I wish I had the numbers up, but the refugee crisis is going to be exponentially worse because as the climate changes, and big parts of the earth are right now inhabited by millions of people, will be inhabitable in a near future, like mid-century, because of heat. So even if you just step out for 10 minutes, you can actually die from it. So once areas of the world get that hot, they're going to have to migrate. There's not going to be, first of all, you can't live there. Secondly, there's no food or water because it's so dry. And so just think about all these people having to get up and go, where are they going to go? And so if you think the migration crisis is, the immigration crisis is bad today, it's going to get exponentially worse with climate change. And then there are small things, just the fact that the winters are getting warmer. So bugs and insects that usually don't survive the winters are now surviving the winters, and they're killing fauna and trees, and interrupting the ecosystems. And the desertification from the fact that we are killing the soil at a rapid speed, which means that it can't take up water, it can't grow as much food, which also, pushes people to having to migrate to different parts of the world. A lot of the wars we're seeing are actually a cause of climate change because people had to migrate and end up in cities where they don't belong and they have no home and they've been farmers their whole life. So what are they going to, like I'm talking about Syria now, for example, where a lot of farmers had to move. And I'm trying to think about, like, there's so many things, obviously, like we should know that 90% of global warming has been absorbed by the oceans. So we keep measuring temperature rise in the atmosphere, which is accurate to know about, but the temperature rise in the oceans is so much worse. And as we're shifting the climate in the oceans, getting more acidified, we're killed about, I think, 50% of our marine life. And so with less marine life, there's less oxygen being created in the oceans. We're overfishing in the oceans too. So all this disruption in the oceans change the currents in the ocean, which, directly affects the weather above water. And so all these intensified storms that we are experiencing right now is directly caused by climate change because warmer oceans create more intense, actually affects the jet streams. So the jet streams used to be like kind of solid waves just going across the globe like this. And now if you're not watching a video, you don't know what I'm saying, but like they were like just waves going across the globe. And now they're becoming like so interrupted, like sometimes they stall and they just keep circulating. So for example, we have much heavier rainfall. We can have storms that just keep stalling for days, although they usually just pass for like a day or so, or even weeks sometimes. All the flooding we have had this summer, all the drought, the fact that Texas had a freezing weather last winter, these are all causes of climate change. And I hate to say this, but I have to because we talked about awareness early on. We have to be prepared that things will get worse because this is the scariest part of all of it. Even if we were to stop climate change tomorrow, if we, by some magical means, tomorrow stopped, emitting any more greenhouse gases and just like, okay, this is it, we're going to start, reversing climate change. Already, we have emitted enough greenhouse gases where we're going to continue to see a rise in climate, in temperature for the next decades. So that tipping point is already reached. There's no going back from that, which means that even if we are taking the right steps, we are taking the right action, we are actually heading in the right direction in terms of what we can do, we will not see those results right away. It will seem and appear as for a decade or so that things are getting worse because they will be getting worse. But we have to know that so that we can remember that although we're not seeing the results, we have to keep doing whatever we can to reverse this because we can reverse it, which is, I think, the most important thing we need to know is like, there are scientific proof that we can do this. We have the technology, we have everything we need to know. We just have to find the willpower and the courage to do it. So with that said, the future, if we don't figure out climate change, is unbelievable beyond imagination. Like we don't even know what kind of, catastrophe we'll have upon us in just a few decades. That's terrifying. At the same time, things will get worse. We can't control that. We already reached that point where like we have, there's no going back from that. At the same time, too, there is so much we can do and we can't figure this out. And the game is not over, it's game on. So we have to just remember that as we continue to take action.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. And, I think it goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning, where it's about being, finding that middle ground where let's be optimistic about it and look at, okay, where we're at right now, we can't change. And yeah, it's scary to acknowledge it. And it's pretty crazy to really think about, isn't it? But let's acknowledge that. And even if it is scary, let's realize what we're dealing with and then be positive about, what we can do to make a change in this moving forward, because that's all we can really control. We can't control, what's already happened, but we can, make a change now and improve things for the future. So let's be optimistic about that and really do everything we can to make that a reality.
Yeah. And this is something I want anyone who's listening to ask themselves every morning, what other options do we have? Right? Like, do we not want to figure this out? Like, do you want to bring a child into this world? No, like that's why I'm optimistic, is like, yes, things are not looking great, but also I have no other choice than to do everything I can every single day and be as optimistic and as empowered and as action driven as I possibly can to make a better world happen. And so that's what I keep coming back to, is like, I'm actually very optimistic. We have nothing to lose, only incredible things to win. So what other driver do you need, really, in my opinion?
I love that. No, I love that point. And again, that's a thing that I think any part of life, it's like looking at is dwelling on things, sitting there worrying about things, sitting there, theorizing about what may or may not happen. Is any of, that going to actually change anything? And the answer is no. We can sit there and be in our head and, in mental health, it's something that, such a big thing with anxiety and, but it's not, if you use logic, well, that's not going to change anything. But what are the things I can change? And we're living in such uncertainty in all aspects of life now since COVID and, nothing's certain in life anyway, or not a lot of things. So it's like always going back to, okay, well, what are the logical things that I can actually do? Let's focus on that and, not spend too much time sitting there dwelling on the things I can't control, because it's not going to help anything. It's not going to help the outcome. It's not going to help you. If you just look at it for yourself, you're not going to feel good if you sit there and, it's going to have a negative impact. So why don't I do what's going to empower me, make me feel better, and put something good out into the world?
And here's my reality. Most of my anxiety or stress or unhappiness really has stemmed from me having to make a choice and not knowing what the right choice is. So I'm such an indecisive person. So like for me to have no choice but to do whatever I can, I think that just brings me so much peace of mind. It's like, there's no option here. It's just about me today doing whatever I can, right? Like that's all there is to it.
Well, it's another thing we share in common. I love it when the things are black and white and it's like that, because that's like choice is a hard, and I was talking to you last week, I'm looking for an apartment at the moment. And even that, it's like, well, where do I get? How do I decide which one? What's right? What's wrong? It's like your mind can go crazy, and it's like it's nice to sometimes not have to make a choice. It's like, well, you know what? This is the path I'm going down because there is no alternative here. Like you said, it just makes it so much more clear and simple and focused, and that can be, I guess moving on to asking you about, you talked quite a bit about this and the mental health implications of with climate change as well. How big of an issue is that? Because I know even when we're talking about, choice, we live in a world now where a lot of us are fortunate enough to have access to so many things and so many decisions we can make every day that brings about mental health issues, because it's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, even if I make a good choice, there's probably a better one, or that person's doing better than me. I need to do that as well, but I also need to do this. And what about this? And what about this? And then you go crazy. So choice can be, a scary thing. But what you talked about climate anxiety before, how that's becoming a bigger issue, you were saying?
Yes. Again, I should really have a sheet with all the numbers that I'm talking about. I'm not good in details, but the numbers are, rapidly racing towards the wrong direction. especially amongst kids, youth, like teenagers, kids, seeing very young ages, people are just afraid of what's going to happen and they're unsure of the future. And like, if you're a teenager and you don't have to just worry about like picking the right career, about like, am I going to have a future to live in? Like, that's a pretty scary thing to have to deal with. So yes, unfortunately, climate anxiety is on the rise. And I think it's really important that we start talking about this a lot more. To tie that into what you just said about choice, though, because I feel like there was so much to be said about that. And there are ways in my opinion, to deal with climate anxiety. I kind of touched upon them earlier. One is to land in the fact that awareness hurts and that's okay. Then start talking about it to people, or even journaling. I think journaling is so helpful and powerful. I actually have some free journaling guides on this on my website. So if anyone wants to head over to theclimateoptimist.com and find those there, please do. I've healed so much of myself from just journaling and being with myself and finding that space. But then also, like I said, doing something and doing it in community with others, because we are not alone in this. You're not alone. You might feel that way if you live in a place where no one else around you cares, but all you have to do today is go on social media or find something online, or even just do a little research, and there might be a grassroots movement in your community that you can join and start seeing people in real life too. But in terms of choice, I like to think of climate action as a road trip, and this journey that we have here to face as a road trip. Because here's the thing, we don't know every single choice we have to make to get to the future that we desire. We don't know everything that will help us figure out climate change. I actually heard, the head of a really big company last week on Climate Week say this: in order for us to reach our goal, we need to rely on innovation that we haven't seen yet. So, that just speaks to a lot of things. Like, we don't know yet how to figure everything out. We know how to get started, which is amazing. And so just like a road trip, we're like, okay, I know where I'm going. I have a destination. Never been there before, so I have no idea what it looks like, but I have an idea what it could look like. But then you have to just, hit the road and, take it day by day and use the GPS. And if something, there's a roadblock or something doesn't work out, you have to reroute yourself. You'll figure it out. If you have to pee and eat something, you stop and fuel up. Like, all of these things you do. Like, you don't know every single step, every single rest stop you're going to take, or every motel you will stay at, or whatever you're doing in a road trip. Like, you know all these details, figure it out. And so we have to start addressing this the same way. And also, what I always say, which is the most important thing about a road trip, is that you have fun right now. You don't wait until you get to the destination to have fun. If you take a flight somewhere, there's all this, stress and having to check in and all these things. So taking a flight, and then once you're there the next day, well, then finally you can rest and relax. If you take a road trip, it's a whole different game. You hit the road, you put some music on, you have some snacks in the bag, and you have friends in the car, you have fun, right? Like, the whole journey is where the fun happens. And so we need to start thinking of this the same way, because for us to figure out climate change, it's going to take decades. This is like our lifetime to do this work. And so we need to live now. We need to see that as a really amazing time to be alive. There's a lot of opportunities, and climate change brings a lot of opportunity for growth, for us to rethink the system, to do things even better, to co-create an even better world. It's not about, just avoiding disaster. It's actually about how can we make something amazing from this. And then again, don't do this on your own. Like, carpool with people, drive an electric car and carpool. So if you're tired, ask someone else to drive the car. Not every single day will you wake up and be like, I'm going to change the world today, because we have our days, right? We're tired, but know that on the days that you can't do it, someone else is doing it for you, because we're in this together. We are going on this journey together, and we will have fun, and we will, make mistakes. We will run out of gas. We can fuel up again and keep going. But we need to keep that mindset with us of like, okay, one step at a time. What do we know today that we can act on? How can we get this car moving? And then as we drive down the road, we'll find out another solution. We learn something new. We meet some new people, and then suddenly, boom, a new idea sparks to life, and we do something else. So like, we can't wait for the day we know everything to get started. We need to start right now, but we need to trust that we will figure it out.
I love it. And that applies for everything in life. We it's not waiting for the destination to be, to give us, validation or permission to be happy and enjoy things. It's about having this purpose and value system, but then like you said, and like you talked about at the beginning as well, you were saying, you very early on knew you wanted to make change in climate change. You wanted to be part of awareness and, do things in that area, but you didn't know exactly how it would unfold. And, then you went and, which I think is really smart, going and studying marketing and looking at those areas, because then you can apply that to get that message out there more broadly. But you didn't know how all the dots will connect. And we never, and every stage we get to, we still don't know exactly how they're going to connect, but it doesn't really matter. I think if you have goals where it's about, it has to specifically be this, whatever it is in your head, that's setting yourself up for failure. So it's, instead of it having to be this tangible thing, make it more about let's look at what my value and purpose is. What do I want to have as my purpose? And I did this to myself a long time ago and thought, I just want to make change in mental health. And I don't know how that's going to unfold. I don't know whether that's going to be through doing a talk or going and, doing a podcast or doing, some other completely random thing I can't even think up yet. But if I just wake up every day and have that one goal and try and even do one thing that, that progresses me on that journey, and even if it only helps one person, that's still moving the needle forward. So, and we can apply that to anything in life. So much of what, you're talking about today can be applied to people for whatever they're doing in life, which I think is so important. But, bring it back to, how do I actually enjoy this process and make sure that I'm checking in with that? And it sort of reminds me of this John Lennon quote where he said, life only makes sense backwards, but it must be lived forwards, which I think is so important.
So important. Yeah. And I completely understand that not everyone's listening right now cares about climate change the way I do. I'm a different species. That's okay. But I also, what you just said, this applies to everything in life. And really, for me, I want to help people help the world. But the first step is helping people, because I've gone through some crazy journeys on myself and learned so many things, and I'm still learning, and I have no idea what the dots will add up to moving forward. But at the end of the day, how can I help someone do something better for climate? And you don't have to care or want to care about climate change or anything. Well, that's not right. I think what people will start to realize, no matter who you are, what you care for, what your passion is, you care about climate change, because whatever you do, you're going to get affected by climate change. So we all care about the future, right? And so I think coming back to, be the best version of yourself that you can be the leader that you want to be, and implement awareness to climate change in your everyday life. You don't have to set aside time to do this. I think it's just becoming more aware of this is real. It's going to affect me. It's already affecting the world at large. And how can I be part of the new world that's actually taking form right now? And back to this wonderful, sense of creation, right? We're undergoing a transformation right now, and things look scary from inside this craziness. But the best metaphor I know is, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly in the cocoon. It's dark and messy, and we have no idea what's going on. But we don't know what's going to come from this. We don't know the kind of world we're going to see on the other side of this. And the coolest thing is that everyone who's alive today, get to play a part in co-creating this new world. So I think it's a really awesome time to be alive. But that's just why I'm a climate optimist. But yeah, back to what you said, this applies to everything. And we have to come back to ourselves and say, who do I want to be? What do I care for? And how can I become a leader in my own life, for myself and for others and for the world?
Yep, exactly. And, if you, like you're saying, if you do that work on yourself and you try and become the best version of yourself, regardless of whatever you're interested in, if you bring it back to climate change, like you're saying, when you are the best version of yourself and being honest with yourself, you're going to care about it. How can you not? So it's if we just work on ourselves, we're going to all, byproduct of that, hopefully contribute or start talking about, these issues that need to be dealt with. So I think it's a really good point. You've sort of talked about this a little bit in this chat, but are there some daily and in general to do with climate change and just your well-being as well? Do you have daily things you do? A big part of this podcast is interviewing people that have had success in different areas and been on interesting journeys like yourself, and looking at what are some things they do to keep to improve their mindset and look after their well-being and that kind of thing. So for our listeners, are there certain things you do daily that really help you?
Yes, I'm very much a person who stick to my routines. And if I don't, I lose myself. Well, I would say, yeah. I'm a morning bird to start. So I love getting up early, like 4:45, 5:00.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I love being up before anyone else. So I spend the first hour writing, because for me, I've always been writing, and it's just part of my creativity that I want to keep alive. Doesn't mean I had to do anything with my writing. I am writing a newsletter these days that goes out weekly, but just writing because it helps me stay, connected with myself. And I do my best writing in the morning. So that's the first thing I do, with some coffee. And then I go for my walk. I go for walks every morning. I do it because I need to move my body. I'm someone who's like, if I sit still for too long, and we're getting closer, and it's getting, but like sitting still for a long time, I hate traveling for that reason. Drives me crazy. So for me to stay in my flow, to stay creative, to stay, productive, I need to move. So I go for walks probably 3 times a day at least. That's why I also love living in a city like New York, because no matter what you do, you're going somewhere, you're walking somewhere. So it just really fits into my daily routines. But there are times when I'm just like, I don't know if I can fit in a walk right now, but I push myself, and it always makes me feel better. And I'm a Swede, and we have a saying in Sweden, which is, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. So even if it's raining out, you just need an umbrella or a raincoat, and you'll be fine. And even on the most dreadful days, you will feel better having some fresh air. Sometimes it's hard if you live in a city, but just trying to get outside and get some clarity. So there are things that I do. It's movement and some sort of, connection with nature, if I can, as much as I can. And I just started doing yoga, which I've been wanting to do for almost 10 years. And it's already changed my life significantly. And I try to meditate, but it's it comes and goes. For me, being on those walks is meditative for me. But I also try, and this is something that I've been really trying to practice better for the past few years, which is being more just present in all moments of my life, and to have more fun. Honestly, I'm such an overachiever, and I'm really hard on myself. And, I am someone who just needs to be busy. And, in all of this though, like, what are we doing if we're not having fun? So trying to find joy in all the moments, anything you do can be fun if you find some sort of angle to make it fun. So bringing more joy to my day and being more just present and noticing all the things all the time, is what I do to keep myself optimistic and sane. And, I guess I'll just plug real quick too, because a question I get asked a lot being a climate optimist is, optimism isn't real. And, what does it mean to be an optimist for you? And I always say choosing optimism is not enough. You can't just say that you want to be an optimist, because then you rely on the world to prove you that, you have your reasons for being optimistic. And there are many times when the world will fail you, especially in climate change, and all the news are just bad news, right? So how do you stay optimistic in that? But being an optimist, in my opinion, is about creating optimism. You have to be an optimist in action. So the only way to truly be an optimist is to choose to be that change and create your own optimism and to fuel your own optimism from within. And so that's what I also do. What can I do today? Even if it's just one small thing that is, bringing the future that I want to see closer, and making me feel like I'm having a positive impact on the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of those. I think there's so many good ones in there. And when it comes to, you were talking about being just more aware moment to moment, I think that's a really good point, because mindfulness and meditation and all these things are talked about, and they've sort of gone in so many different directions, and it can almost be overwhelming. But at the core, all of that stuff really is designed to just do one simple thing and train your mind to be able to just be present and focused on one thing at a time. So if you can be aware of that on a day-to-day basis, then just try and bring yourself back into that. That is really the core of what it's trying to do. And I love what you're saying about movement as well. That's where even the name Move Your Mind came from, just because I think it's just, it's insane. How much of a benefit, we're meant to be moving. Our bodies are meant to move. And the same thing for me. I can be getting in my head, sitting there, working, and I'm sort of can't get clarity. And then you just literally get up and walk for 5 minutes or do something, change your environment, get moving, and your mind opens up and you're thinking creatively again, you solve the issue. And it's just so important, such a simple thing for us to do, but we often, forget to do these simple things because we get caught up in whatever it is we're doing. So it's really just having that awareness, which I love. I love everything you said there. So
one thing I just want to plug, because it made me think of this, and this is a challenge for everyone who's listening. Something that we all need to do, which we tend to dread, but I think it's actually a wonderful opportunity to practice this, is when we do our dishes. I happen to love doing dishes because it forces me to do nothing else and for my brain to just come back to myself. And you can do this without having to pay attention to how you're doing your dishes, right? Like it's just about scrubbing the dish and using water or whatever. And it's a great opportunity to create that little space of awareness in your day. And so next time you're doing dishes, although you happen to be someone who hates doing dishes, I challenge you to move your mind to a place where you actually enjoy doing dishes. And so it's a practice. But I think it's something that we can practice daily because we do dishes daily, hopefully. And you'll get better at actually bringing that awareness to your everyday life. So I would say that.
I think it's a great point because, and that's the thing I talk about so much, like whatever, every day we're going to have things we don't like doing, but if we can be engaged in what we're doing, even if it's something we hate doing, and engaged in it where we're not thinking about, 100 other things and checking our phone, checking social media, worrying about this and that, just engaged in that one thing at a time. Even things you hate doing become they bring you a bit of joy because your mind is present and you're not, it's like, it's liberating to just be able to stop thinking about things. So I think it's so liberating. So it's a great point. So we finish up every episode with these 5 questions. So these are can be short answers or hopefully not going to, be anything too crazy, but just whatever comes to mind for these. But before I go into that, I think you mentioned earlier, but we'll put this in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where can we send them?
Yeah, I would say go to theclimateoptimist.com. That's my website where I've linked everything else I'm doing. Please follow me on Instagram, is where I'm mainly active, and Therese Gennari, which is my name. And I also have a podcast, Hey Change Podcast, which I hope you check out as well. If you want to learn more about climate change and environmentalism and cool innovators and people making change in the world, head over to Hey Change Podcast.
Perfect. And we will we'll have all of the links for the different sites in the show notes for anyone listening that wants to access them. So final questions. The first one of these 5 questions is, what is the best childhood memory that comes to mind? Or one of them?
Oh my God, you're going to think I'm such an eco nerd, but I had this tree on this plot of land right next to me. It was a beautiful tree, and I used to climb up it and just sit in this tree until the sun came down. And
I love that.
For dinner. That's my memory.
That's so good. I love it. Simple things like that. That's what's good about, child. And I think it's good because it reminds you, I was in Vancouver recently and I was just sitting looking at a mountain, and I had this thought where I was like, well, this cost me nothing to do this, and it's bringing me more joy than any, even if I became a billionaire, no amount of money. This is available to everyone right now. And it's just making me feel so good. And just reminding ourselves of that. It's like all this stuff's there, all the best things are there available to everyone. So I love that. What do you think is one of the biggest burdens on mental health in society at the moment?
This is a big question.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Biggest burden, I think that
one of them.
I think comparison, which is only, accelerated with social media, but we're always comparing ourselves to our peers and the next person and competing, even if it's just competing with ourselves, feeling we have to be someone or be somewhere and do something special, having more followers and more likes. And, we're wasting so much time and space there, hating our bodies, hating ourselves, hating our hair, whatever it is. It's we are divine beings in a beautiful world. And that's what we got to remember. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably the biggest one, where it's never ending, and it's taking us away from being able to experience and enjoy what's in front of us. It's just it's crazy. Do you see things in that area improving, or do you see a bit of both?
I think a bit of both. I mean, because of social media, it's getting worse, and we are just more access to comparing ourselves, not just to, whoever's at school, but to like the whole world, right? Young people are being on TikTok. I'm an old person, so I'm yet to like get active there. But, there's so many ways to compare yourself, and there are filters and stuff. But I think also at the same time, you are seeing this movement of, authenticity and transparency and rawness. And we are not just relating to fake people anymore. We want to see the celebrity behind the facade, and we want to know people on a deeper level. And from the fashion, like the work I'm doing with role models, being an agent and talking to casting directors and clients, like almost every client these days, every brand is looking for people with real stories. They want real mothers and real athletes and real, mental health advocates. Like they want real people, because people want real people. Those are the people that we can relate to. So I think we're seeing it, going in both directions. But I think it's again back to self. What am I doing in this space? And how much am I hating myself for no reason? How much am I comparing myself to other people? And how much can I try to come back to just, finding what's unique and beautiful about me?
I love that answer, and completely agree with everything you said there. So 2 more questions here. What would you say is your personal definition of happiness?
The thing that comes to me is stillness. And I guess I have to elaborate a little bit on that, but I just looked out on this tree outside my window, and the thing that came to me was almost like the tree was giving me this answer, but stillness. When I can find myself in stillness, I had this moment this morning where I pushed my morning walk 15 minutes because I was sitting outside with my coffee and listened to the birds. And I felt so much stillness in that moment. I didn't feel like I had to answer any emails. I didn't have to be anywhere or think anything or do anything. I was just there. And when I find those pockets of stillness, that's when I'm my most happiest self. It's not when I'm out doing something really cool or attending some cool event in New York City. It's literally just in those small, simple moments when I find the true happiness. So I would say stillness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're still like that, we don't have any capacity to worry about things. You're there experiencing something and enjoying it for what it is. So I think it's, and that's what happiness is. It's, peace of mind. It's not about stimulation or achieving things or needing to, constantly do things. That's sort of just that stimulation. So it's about, how can I just be still and present and have that peace of mind? And
that's really also true abundance. And we all have access to this. What you just said about everyone can, take part of nature, which is not always true, because if you live in a city and you can't go anywhere, that's harder. But we can all find that place of stillness within us. We don't need money for that. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't have to be invited to be there. We all have access to our own source of happiness. And I think that's a really powerful reminder.
Yeah, exactly. We can all find it within, rather than having to, search all these external avenues to try and find something we already have access to.
Exactly.
So final one, what would you say is one of the most, you've done many, but what's one of the most courageous things you've ever done?
You're going to laugh at me because I moved from Sweden and, to a new city where I knew no one, and I started my own company and doing all these things. I started a podcast in a language that is not my, my primary language. But the scariest thing I've done is going on a runway as a model in heels, because I hate heels. I'm tall. And so growing up, I was trying to avoid heels as much as I could. And then suddenly I decided to be a model, and I didn't think about the fact that, okay, now they're going to put you on runway with heels on, and having to walk out on that stage was heartbeat moment. So that's probably one of my proudest moments, honestly, because I overcame that fear. It's a silly thing, like who cares? But I think it's just a reminder for anyone that we need to face our fears, because we grow as people when we do. That's probably, I would say that.
I love that. It's a great finishing. And again, facing fear, I talk about that so much, and it's different for everyone. Something that one person's afraid of, someone else might be able to do with their eyes closed, and then, vice versa. So it's like everyone has their own things that we're comfortable and uncomfortable with. And sometimes doing things, even if it's not something, that we want to pursue our lives doing long term. It's more about let's just move out of our comfort zone, because that helps you grow. And I think, I love that point. So I want to say to you, thank you so much for making the time to come and talk to me today. I think we could probably talk for a lot longer about all of these different things. There's so many different sort of topics to go into, but I love everything you said. I think it's really inspiring what you're doing. Your story is incredible. I know our listeners are going to take so much out of this. So keep doing what you're doing. You've already helped me make a change in my mind about making sure I get cups when I go and get actual, not takeaway cups. When I get a coffee, that's my first thing I'm going to start doing. But thank you again for coming and talking about it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you're doing in this space, helping people with their mental health. You're amazing. So honored to be here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks to Sasha Kaufman for joining me today for Move Your Mind. And just another reminder that the Move Your Mind book is now available globally. You can get it in stores in Australia, you can get it online globally, and the audio book is also now available globally.